If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to the Law Firm Practice Management Advice Podcast.
The fundamentals of business.
Join Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm as he discusses helpful strategies, tools, and insights to grow and manage a legal practice.
Good ideas are simple.
From improving client relationships to managing your team and scaling your practice, this podcast offers practical advice for navigating the challenges of law firm management.
Shall we proceed?
Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Law Firm Practice Management Advice. We have an interesting topic today. The topic is providing potential clients IRAC answers. This episode today is based on an article on my blog, lawfirmpracticemanagementadvice.com, dated September 10th, 2015. And the title of that article is IRAC Answers Can Help During Initial Consultations. So as a follow-up to the episode today, go on over to my blog and read this article on this topic for more information. But let's go ahead and jump on into the topic at hand. The reality is, during initial consultations, potential clients oftentimes ask direct questions of the lawyer that they're meeting with. And how a lawyer responds to these questions can go a long way in terms of whether or not they get lots of new clients, or whether or not these potential clients in large scale leave the law firm and don't hire the lawyer. So learning how to answer potential client questions during an initial consultation with a potential client is very important. And obviously this is particularly true for lawyers who have their own practice. Maybe they've hung their own shingle and they're trying to grow and scale their practice, so they need new clients. And look, knowing how to answer these questions is just a huge key. Now, this article I wrote almost 10 years ago. So this is something that came to me a long time ago as sort of an epiphany. So let me kind of break this down. In law school, on essay exams, at some point, and I've been out of law school since 2000, but I was taught to give IRAC answers. And IRAC, for those of you that don't know, stands for Issue, Rule, Analysis, Conclusion. And then when I prepped to take the bar examination in 2000, I was taught the same thing. In terms of essay examinations, you read a hypothetical scenario and you're asked to analyze it from a legal perspective. And one of the things I was taught was to give IRAC answers. Again, issue, rule, analysis, and conclusions. So after meeting lots of potential clients throughout my career, again, this sort of came to me as sort of an epiphany. Now, I think on a lot of levels, it was something I was always kind of doing. I just hadn't really put it together. And it's one of the reasons I was able to grow my law practice. But look, it's a dilemma. When you're meeting a potential client and they haven't hired you yet, obviously you can't give them legal advice until they've hired you and signed a fee agreement and paid an initial deposit or a retainer, whatever you call it at your firm. But even before you're able to get there, to get the potential client to want to hire you, they are going to ask, at least most potential clients I've dealt with, very direct types of questions. And they want you to answer them. And again, you're walking this line between not giving legal advice, but you're showing that you can analyze your situation, you've heard what they've got to say, and that you can reason through their situation and come up with some answers that make sense to them, all right? So think about this for a minute. You know, you're meeting a potential client and they ask you a question. Like, look, if I hire you, are you going to be able to get me X, Y, or Z result? Or what do you think the judge is going to do on this particular issue in the case? Or what do you think the outcome on this particular issue might be in the case? And again, this is going to vary based on the area of law in terms of how exactly you do this. But one of the things I would say to the listeners, and so any of you, if you're attorneys and you're looking to do better in consultations, think about applying IRAC to the questions you get in the consultation room, okay? So let me break this down. So if a potential client asks you a potential question, all right, and let's say it's along the lines of, you know, what you would do or what do you think the case outcome might be? I mean, these are very common questions. So take a client who wants a house in the divorce. okay? And they say, look, if I were to hire you, I want to get this house in the divorce. What do you think my chances would be? Okay, so how might you apply this in terms of an IRAC answer? What I would tell the listeners to do is take the question and repeat it to them and say, okay, so you want to know if you hire me, whether or not you're going to get the house in the divorce. Is that what your question is? And they'll say, yeah, that's the question. And then you want to affirm it and say, well, that's a really good question. And I'm glad you asked me that question. So then jump to the rule. And when you get to the rule, you've got to keep it simple. And you have to say, look, in a divorce, the court's going to divide marital property and debt in a just manner when considering all the factors. And so now you're going to jump to the analysis and you're going to give them the pros first, okay? And hearing what you told me, here would be the things that make sense in terms of you getting the house. I mean, these are things a court could theoretically rely on and hang their hat on giving you the house. And then as a balanced attorney, you're going to give them the cons. On the other hand, look, your soon-to-be ex might argue X, Y, and Z. So these are the factors, if you will, that the court might rely on not to give you the house. And then you give them a conclusion and just say, look, and it's going to be an honest conclusion. Based on the limited facts you gave me here, here's what I think. And here's what our approach and here's what our strategy would be if you were to hire me. Again, I've given you the pros, I've given you the cons, but here's how we would go about it, all right? Attorneys who give IRAC answers like this, during initial consultations, from my vantage point, do very, very well because, again, you're taking their question, you're repeating it back, which shows that you listened. You're giving them the rule. And again, when you give the rule, lawyers, be simple. Don't be too legalistic about this like law school professors. Give the rule in a really layperson's terms, okay? And then you're going to give the pros. You're going to give the cons. So you're being very balanced in terms of your analysis, and then you're going to give them a conclusion, which is what you think ought to happen or might happen, what's most likely to happen, and then you're going to explain what your strategy would be as an attorney, okay? From my vantage point, lawyers who give IRAC answers to questions do very well. Potential clients feel like they were listened to. They can tell you know the law. They know you're giving balanced answers, so you're not just promising them things that you can't deliver on. You're giving them the pros, you're giving them the cons, and then you're giving them your honest assessment. And so you could really do this with almost any kind of question in an initial consultation and do very well. Okay, let me contrast this, though, in terms of what I've seen lots of lawyers do who do not succeed with initial consultations, okay? So they get asked a question like this, and what some lawyers do is stonewall. And stonewalling would be when you get the question, like, am I going to get the house in the divorce? The lawyer simply says really short and crass answers like, well, I don't know. It depends. It'd be up to the judge. We'll have to go to court and see. Answers that are really non-responsive, right? Kind of comes off like a politician dodging the question. Okay, so lawyers, don't do that. Don't stonewall. Give IRAC answers. Here's another thing I see lawyers do who struggle with consultations. They become the naysayer, okay? As a lawyer in practicing a long time, look, I feel like the best I can do is give a potential client the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, in a middle case scenario, which I think will be the most likely outcome. But in doing this a long time, I understand I don't wear the robe, and judges can do different things and at times do things that surprise me. So, but some lawyers are what I call the naysayers, and they're just worst case scenario. So if they get the question and it's like, am I going to get the house in the divorce? They'll jump right to the conclusion and say, no, I don't think you're going to get it. I think your spouse will get the house. You might want to start finding a new place to live. I don't think this house is going to work out. And again, lawyers, you might think you're being super honest here, but ultimately you don't wear the robe. You're not the judge. You don't know what the judge will do for sure. And even if you think this, you're better to give this kind of answer in the form of an IRAC answer. By, again, taking the question, repeating it back, giving the rules, giving the pros, then giving the cons, and then your conclusion saying, look, I'm really kind of worried about the cons here. We can try to get you the house and the divorce, but look, there's some questions and some real concerns I have based on what I told you, right? So, that's okay, but don't just be a naysayer. Obviously, on the flip end, don't overpromise just to get new cases. If you do that and you don't deliver, then you're going to have a lot of upset clients on the back end. So don't just say, oh, yeah, hire me and you're going to get the house. That's not a good way to answer the question. Again, you wear the robe, you don't know for sure. And if you call your shot and you don't deliver, you're going to have a really upset client with you. So lawyers, look, you get questions at initial consultations, you need new cases, you need new clients. You can't just stonewall the questions, you can't just naysay them, don't overpromise to get cases, give balanced answers. Take the IRAC answers that hopefully you were taught in law school in terms of how to take essay exams or pass the essay portion of the bar exam and apply that to consultations. And most lawyers that I've seen, when they get good at giving IRAC answers, they do very well because the potential clients feel like, wow, these are some great answers. And this is thorough, and this is a fair assessment, and I really appreciate this, okay? So again, as a follow-up to the episode today, going over to my blog, lawfirmpracticemanagementadvice.com, read the article that I wrote almost a decade ago called IRAC Answers Can Help During Initial Consultations. See about applying that to your potential client consultations and see how that works for you. Hopefully it works for you, and it'll be kind of a light bulb moment that helps you get lots of new clients. Well, thanks for tuning in today. Stay tuned for our next episode coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Practice Management Advice Podcast with Kirk Stange. Kirk Stange is the president and founding partner of Stange Law Firm, a multi-state divorce and family law practice. For more insight on similar law firm management topics, visit his practice management advice blog at lawfirmpracticemanagementadvice.com.